Welcome to our digital production of Eggs. The whole story was written by Jerry Spinelli. A quote from the book is, "Friendship is not always sunny side up."
David is a 9-year-old kid whose mother's died. He is going to an egg hunt. The only thing is that he doesn't want to go. His grandmother's only taking him because his dad told her to. So while they were in the car, David's grandmother was trying to convince him that it was going to be fun, like she always did. David tried to tell his grandmother that they could dye some eggs at home instead of going to the Easter egg hunt. Still, David's grandmother says no. David miserably got out of the car. Primrose is an only child. She lives with her mother, who is a fortune teller. Primrose woke up to a room, or sort of room. It's actually a junky van. On the inside, she turns it into a room. In it she had a bing bed, a chair, curtains, 2 dresser drawers, and her dad's picture, a makeup tray. The neat stack of House Beautifuls were also laying there. Her sneakers were side by side on the floor next to her bedroll. She doesn't live in a house with her mother because it's a lone room house. That and the fact that she doesn't like her mom at all. David was standing on the top of the hill of the Easter egg hunt. He was standing with a whole bunch of other kids waiting to go down to the hill and get some eggs. A guy with a bullhorn was instructing the kids. He said, "Get ready, get set." Then one of the kids pushed another, and everyone finally regrouped. They finally got to the start again. All the kids rushed down to the hill and got the eggs before David could get one. He yelled, "Wait, stop!" But the instructor yelled, "Go, go, go!"
So David looked in the dirt and found a sky blue egg. One of the big boys took David's egg on purpose. So the man said, "Look under and in the dark." So David did, and he found a nice yellow Easter egg. There in the grass was the face of a beautiful girl. He asked, "You're dead, aren't you?" David was not afraid. David was having dreams that night. He kept hearing his mother's voice calling him from the top of a hill. She was a shadow within shells of eggs, speaking to him in sounds he did not understand. There was no school the next day. It was Easter vacation. David's grandmother couldn't figure out where David was. David was riding his bike. David is waiting outside for the paper girl. He is going to meet her at the end of the block. He was hanging around the corner with his yo-yo. While thinking about the paper, he was sure the entire front page would be filled with this story. There would be a big picture, maybe in color, showing the beautiful face and the yellow egg.
David's grandmother was doing it again and again. She was mopping the kitchen floor. David really got mad and started to cry because when his mother died, it reminded him that she fell down the stairs because a wet floor had no wet floor sign. Tragic, was it? She slipped on the floor and fell down some flights of stairs. Over the summer, David started to get bored. Weeks went by, a month, and then school was out. David got tired of searching through the newspaper, and he just cut out his favorite comic, Beetle and Bailey. Later, he went to the community center and walked into a book reading with his grandmother. He saw little children on the ground that looked very interested in the story.
Primrose felt weird and confused because the little kid was backing away from her like she was a ghost. He thought she was dead. David is riding his bike and looking at the card that Primrose gave to him, the card that has Primrose's address. When David reaches the door of Primrose's address, a mysterious woman walks through the door and says, "Oh, I don't think you have an appointment, but that's okay, I'll still give you a reading." He confusingly walks through the door and goes to the living room. She pretends like she's reading him, which she actually thinks that she does, while Primrose comes in to retrieve him and says, "That's not a customer." David is relieved, and then Primrose shows David her house, in which is actually a wrecked car. Primrose and David make a close bond and soon are out at night, late as 3 o'clock in the morning, taking people's trash so they can sell it to people for extra money.
David got a lot better at staying up late. Every night David snuck out and asked Primrose what time it was. It was a thrill to hear the answers. 2:30, 3 o'clock. He always went to bed before sunrise. He had promised he wouldn't see the sunrise without his mom. His grandma noticed that he was always looked tired, so he put a decoy so she wouldn't notice him sneaking out. She would call him out by saying "baloney" as a signal. One night they watched TV in David's room. He laughed so hard his grandma came up and was so happy to see him laughing for the first time. When they weren't shopping, they were hanging at Refrigerator John's house. They would talk every once in a while, and then watch TV, and then David and Primrose would fight, and John would laugh. So he bought a TV and a dartboard and a Malapia game, but things didn't turn out the way he thought it would.
David and Primrose fought and made up quickly. For instance, Primrose would turn off the TV and David would be very mad, then forget about it. Almost every day David would say, "I don't like you." He had learned a touchy subject for Primrose was her mystery father, who she only saw for the first year of her life. Primrose swore she remembered him saying, "Bye-bye, Primsy, I love you," sadly. Any fight would pass, and before you'd know it, she would be making his lunch while he would be braiding her hair. Primrose and David had many fights before, but never like this one. It had all started with the typical, "Hey, maybe your father's an astronaut," David would say, or maybe he's a clown. Primrose didn't like this idea, but she got over it. When David said it, he said, "Hey, maybe that's the man who waves at random people is your dad." Primrose tackled him and said, "My dad isn't this bum. Don't ever mention him again." David bellowed through his tears, "I hate you and your crazy mother." Primrose answered, "At least I have a mother that's alive." David swung the controller at her face, but John blocked it. To change the subject, John decided to tell them about the night crawlers. Primrose had been pestering Refrigerator John for more ways to earn money, so Refrigerator John mentions the night crawlers. These are very large, up to 1 foot long, worms that when it rains they come out. John needs these worms to sell and make money by making a bait shop. John offers 5 cents for little worms and 25 cents for long worms, and on that note, David and Primrose go to find them with jars and red light, for worms can't see red light. Unfortunately, they have a fight, and both of them only end up with a few worms. The reason why Primrose and David had such a fight was because they both reached for the same nightcrawler at the same time. Primrose roared, "It's mine!" And David said, "No, it's mine!" But then sadly, the worm split in half. "See what you did?" they roared at each other. David got so mad that he emptied Primrose's pail of worms. Primrose said, "Take a good look." And then she ran off.
John decided to stop the bait business. Also, Primus was still $20 short on paint money for her car. While at a flea market with the business hot going as planned, thanks to Primrose, David looked around and finds a picture that looks like Primus's father. So, it isn't Primus's father. David decides not to tell Primrose. Also, David and Primrose started to become better friends. They got paint for Primus's van, room, and / car, and painted all the windows together. David was kind of confused why she did that, but she said she doesn't like the people egging her house. Between David and his grandmother, the only thing holding the relationship together is the single carrot, which David doesn't eat anyway. David and Primrose are at 7-Eleven. They see the Midsummer's Night Scream poster, and they decide to go together. That is when he sees the parent-child event, only at the bottom of the poster. Primrose had an idea so that she can go with him. The Midsummer Night Scream as the mom, and David would go as the son. David and Primrose are on their way to the Midsummer Night Scream. David would go as the son, and Primrose would go as the mother. Unfortunately, Primrose gets bossy, and then let's see what happens. Midsummer Night Scream did not go well, so unfortunately, they didn't hang out together, and they weren't friends anymore. They had a fight at the library where David takes off the disguise, and Primrose gets in trouble. David rides home alone on his bike, and Primrose sells her items at the flea market alone. They don't hang out. One time, David bike rides all night, and then when he tries to go home, he's lost and can't find his way. Then the sun comes out, so he has to run into Refrigerator John's room so he can't see the sunrise. David goes to Madame DeFee's house while Primrose is out shopping at the flea market. While there, he sees Madame Duffy and asks, "Can you help me talk to my mother?" And gives her a little miniature turtle, which was one of her past items. And then she tries to, read it. And it says, shakalaka laka, shakalaka. And then he screams, "Crackpot, you're a crackpot. I never want to see you again. You're crazy." After seeing Madame Duffy, David tries to wanders home. He can't find his way home, unfortunately. So he goes to Refrigerator John's and hides under the couch so the sunrise gets up. And then Refrigerator John has to take him home, and his grandmother was worried sick.
Chapter 31. When Refrigerator John finds David at his house, Refrigerator John decides to bring David to his own house. When the grandmother opens the door, she's very panicky, but is relieved to see that he is okay. Refrigerator John and the grandmother take this time to talk to each other. The next day, when David finds himself in bed, he finds a note on his bed saying, "Come over now," signed Primrose. He's kind of confused, but he pedals over there on his bike the fastest that he can.
Primrose says we're going somewhere. David asks, "Where?" Primrose replies, "The big city." "You mean Philadelphia?" "Yep." And then they're on their way. Today, Primrose and David were in the city. They saw amazing buildings, and they all had a unique design. It was just a wonderful sight to see. Primrose exclaimed, "I want to go home, now," many times. It got David would always exclaim, "I want to go home, now." And then Primrose would exclaim, mocking him in a mocking voice, "I want to go home now." "Too late," she said. David would always exclaim, "I want to go home, now." And Primrose would say in a mocking voice, "I want to go home now." "No, it's too late." Primrose and David sat down with bushes blocking them from the tracks. Then they had a, sort of dinner of their favorites, mango madness and malt balls. Then the night fell over.
Earlier that day, Primrose and David were walking up the tracks with a couple of malt balls and one sip of mango madness left. They had some deep conversations that time. When David asked Primrose why she pretended that mysterious guy in the picture was her dad, she said it was easier to pretend than face the reality. Then David even admitted that he thought by following all the rules and being, a good boy would make his mom come back. Now back to this time, David starts to read Primrose stories his mom told him all night. Primrose slept peacefully. Primrose and David were sitting in the middle of an empty dam when a police car pulled up and said, "David Limbert? Primrose Duffy?" They called, "Yes." And the policeman said, "Time to go home." They climbed into the car and had a good time looking at the assortment of buttons and sirens, while David showed the policeman his yo-yo tricks. They were a block away from their house when a crowd of grateful, worried people cheered. Everyone celebrated, had joy on their faces, and some were crying. One thing Primrose didn't expect was her mother, just as wild as the others, with her blonde wig falling down to one ear, excited to see her. Thank you for listening to our digital production of Eggs, led by Emma Thrift, leader,
Lindsay Love, co-leader,
Aliki Luisis,
Sade Roy,
Roby Marsabas,
Jermaine Lewis,
Antonio Casiedo,
Adara Brown,
Jasmine Snipe,
Nathan Posadas,
Brandon Williams,
me, Marquise Bailey.
and thank you for listening.